Hi guys, hope you had a good weekend. We are going to start talking about the Cold War this week, coming off of World War II. And to understand the situation with the Cold War, guys, we have to kind of understand some geography, and that's why we are looking at a map of Europe and Asia right now. But basically, guys, the Cold War is an intense rivalry between the Soviet Union and the United States. Um, and a lot of this had to do with uh, basically belief systems. So you had basically communism versus democracy versus capitalism. Okay. And that was a big dividing factor for this. So keep in mind, guys, the Soviet Union, the USSR, they were one of our allies in World War II. And so they were fighting from east to west to take over Germany, to conquer Germany. We were fighting from west to east to conquer Germany. Okay. And even before World War II ended, we started to see tensions rise, guys. You had a situation where the Soviets were not very trusting. We had a very difficult time. Remember, I talked about Lend-Lease, basically supplying the Allies with arms and things like that. And so we had to have all sorts of information and work with the Russians to transport the supplies to the Russians. And they were not very forthcoming with information. They were very secretive. They were very hard to work with. And you have to cut them a little bit of slack, guys, because they had a non-aggression pact with Germany in 1939, and then by 1940, they're being invaded by the Germans. Okay, and so you kind of get an understanding of why they would feel this way, but nonetheless, that's already going to start tensions, and it's going to not be really uh, a great alliance between ourselves and the Soviets. There's a lot of mistrust and misunderstanding going on there. Okay, but that tension is going to build as we get closer to the end of the war, and it looks like the Allies are going to win, and it's really a matter of just finishing the job, and the leaders start to turn to, okay, what's going to happen next? What are we going to do next? What are we going to do about Europe and Germany and all that? Okay, and so like I said, guys, the Soviets, they're coming from the east to west, so they're occupying all these Eastern European countries as they go, as they move towards Germany. And so obviously they have troops in place there, they have control of that. And you have a conference between President Roosevelt, the Prime Minister Winston Churchill of Great Britain, and Stalin of the Soviet Union at Yalta, which is basically on the Black Sea, in his backyard, um, the Black Sea. So basically, guys, what happens is they're trying to decide what are we going to do with Europe, especially Poland, and the Soviets are very adamant that Poland should be a communist nation. It should be, very friendly with the Soviet Union in order to help protect the Soviet Union from further invasions in the future. And Churchill and Roosevelt are very adamant that Poland, the Churchill says, "Hey, we went to war over Polish freedom. Poland should be free. They should have free elections and choose their own government." And so, eventually, the Western leaders said, "Okay, we'll just leave it as is. You can have your way for now, Stalin." And he said, and he basically promised, "Okay, once this is all settled in the future, we'll let them have free elections." Excuse me. Excuse me. So that was the situation. You're already building tensions over what's going to happen with Poland, what's going to happen with the rest of Europe. Eventually, they convinced Stalin to agree to allow um, Europe to be free to have free elections. Okay, so he signs an agreement at Yalta to do that. Um, as the war is finished in Germany and Europe, and we're finishing up in um, against Japan in the Pacific. There's another conference between the Allies, this time at Potsdam, and there you really see the tensions grow, guys. So you basically have the Soviets saying, "Hey, we want to have reparations from Germany. We want to take all their manufacturing machinery, anything of value, basically, and take it back to the Soviet Union with us as reparations for the war." And Truman would have none of it. So, Franklin Roosevelt had passed away. Truman's in power now, right? And he at Potsdam said, "No, no, no. We need a strong Germany. We need their economy to be strong, so we can't strip them of all this machinery and everything. We can't have them being weak because they're kind of the backbone of European industry, and so there's going to be this whole major depression in Europe, and there's going to be anyway, but it's going to be even worse if you do that." And so he would not budge on that. Stalin was not very happy. Finally, Truman agreed, okay, we will send you some of the machinery from West Germany if you send some crops, some food to uh, West Germany to from the more agrarian East Germany. Okay, and so once again, that's where they'd conquered, that's where they'd went in. So the Soviets controlled the eastern half of Germany, the French, British, and the United States controlled the western half, and they also split Berlin. So Berlin was in the eastern section in the Soviets' section of occupation, but it's the capital, so the four countries divided that into occupational zones as well. Um, and so once again, you're having tensions rise, guys. Iran over in the Middle East, guys. The Soviets had moved into there as well. And so they promised to get out. They didn't do that. The Soviets, guys, remember they jumped in the war against Japan right after we dropped the first nuclear bomb. They went, okay, now we'll join the war because we get the spoils, we get the prize after the victory. So they chose to go in at that time. So then we had to split Korea with them. So you have North Korea established that's communist under the influence of the Soviet Union, and South Korea was established under protection of the United States. And so you just have more and more areas where we're dividing between communism and capitalism, communism and democracy, US and Soviet Union. Okay, so that's the situation being detailed in the videos, specifically discussing what was going on in the United States and the Red Scare. Basically, you had a Senator Joseph McCarthy, and he's over here saying, hey, there's communists that have infiltrated the U.S. government, and they're spying on us, which that obviously was intensified. The video is going to reference the Rosenbergs to the Soviet spies that gave away our secrets for a nuclear bomb. And so when the Soviets detonate their first successful nuclear bomb, there's even more hysteria. And that really punctuates with China. So there's a long civil war going on between Chinese nationalists and Chinese communists. Shanghai Shek, Chinese nationalist leader versus Mao Zedong, the communist leader in China. And finally, Mao Zedong and his forces are going to win out and take control of China and institute a communist government in China. So all those things really bubbled up in the surface in the United States and brought about this second Red Scare, where there's this intense fear of communism, that communism has infiltrated our society and is trying to, make us communist and give away secrets. And so McCarthy's, bringing all these people to speak in front of Congress, and he's charging them with being a communist and all these things, and slandering them really, and it gets really, really bad until finally he starts calling out people in the Army, and the Army's representation lawyer finally gets on him and basically says, "Have you no decency?" and all this stuff. And this is on live TV, and so finally, people kind of see him for what he was, which is a bully, and he loses power. He loses, popularity, which that was part of his power was, okay, you better not go against Joseph McCarthy, or he might be calling you to the stand next, and you might be labeled as a communist and lose your job. At that time, guys, people were being blacklisted, especially in Hollywood. So Hollywood producers came together and came up with a big list of names, over 150 names of people that were believed to be communists. And so, hey, don't hire these people, these actors, these screenwriters, all these people, which is bad, guys, really, really bad. So communism, the Soviet Union, stood for a lot of oppression and problems and all that. But this is still supposed to be the United States. It's supposed to be the land of freedom. And so that includes, the freedom to have your own ideas and opinions, even if they don't match up with society and with what our country necessarily stands for. And so you have to have those freedoms as long as you're not endangering others' freedoms. And so that was a big issue as well. The video also, guys, discusses the situation in Europe where the Soviets are trying to really influence these different countries in Europe and turn them communist, turn them over to their side. And the United States basically came up with an idea to prevent this by instituting the Marshall Plan. And so the Marshall Plan essentially said, okay, we're going to provide any country that practices democracy with funding, economic aid. And basically, hey, if we make the situation good again in these European countries like Greece and other places, they're not going to turn to communism. They're not going to turn to the Soviets. They'll stay free and democratic because they have the economic means to not have to turn to that kind of a situation. And so that was part of the plan as well. So that's really the bulk of kind of what these videos cover. So I hope you guys enjoy them and learn a lot from them. This is a very expansive topic. There's so much we could talk about, so it's really kind of hard to narrow it down, but we're going to do the best we can with our limited time. So, all right, I'll talk to you guys again soon. Take care.